On Atheists Say the Darndest Things, we often explore atheistic myths. Uh, Once you understand that a myth is just a traditional story to explain things that you really can't explain very well or very easily, or the unknown, you realize a myth is a pretty handy description of what atheism does whenever it's speaking of how things began. When they're trying to answer the question, why is there anything at all? You'll find that myths spring up. Some of them will be like abiogenesis, which I'll discuss later. You'll see uh, panspermia with aliens and cosmic dust, and I'll explain that later. You'll see all these desperate attempts, but that's what you expect from mythology. But this atheist myth is the one that a lot of people actually subscribe to, including Stephen Hawking, one of our traveling medicine show heroes. And you'll see why this desperate attempt not to have a deity will lead a man to madness in his reasoning, a very bright mind, and crazy, crazy thinking. Try this one on. I think the universe was spontaneously created out of nothing, according to the laws of science. It has no beginning and no end. Stephen Hawking. He'll eventually drop this belief and pick up a new myth that he creates himself, the infinite number of universes. When you see this one, multiverse it's called, it's just his last ditch attempt. If he'd have lived another 20 years, he'd have junked that and come up with another one, all to keep God out of the classroom. It's amazing. I think the universe is spontaneously created out of nothing. We're back to the same magic trick. Nothing becoming something. I told you all of these fall under that same heading. All basic myth is nothing, which is no thing, will always become magically something. Miraculously would be better. They need a miracle, even though they hate miracles, but they ask you to please allow them this one to get off the ground. It's just ridiculous. It's sad. And you say of science, it said here's what he's going to do it according to the laws of science. Folks, scientific laws describe things. They don't create, they describe what you see. That's all laws do. The law of chance describes probability. It does not cause anything. So when you have these people saying, according to the laws of science, if there's nothing, we can't have any need for a law of science. So he magically gives you something, and this is what I'm going to describe that to you now, Bill. And I'm going to say the laws of science cause this. And I'm like, how in the world could you even come up with such thinking if you weren't desperate? Then I remember the George Wall quote where he said, look, Pasteur debunked this spontaneous creation nonsense 150 years ago. Hawking apparently didn't get that email from George Wall. But he said, if the only other option for me is God, I prefer to adhere to what I know is a debunked theory. That's what George Wall said, another great atheist thinker. I know it's wrong, but I'd rather adhere to the wrong than have somebody demand that I think there's a God. I can't stand the idea of a deity, therefore I'd rather believe in error. Wow. You call these guys brights, they call themselves brights and public intellectuals, and I'm asking you, just take a look at it. What they are tail spinners, potion salesmen, and myth spreaders. That's the problem with atheism today. Nobody will just say, I don't know. They always give you some cornball thinking and prove to you that you shouldn't listen to them. So if you listen to them closely, please discard them as guides.